Claire didn't think much of the inheritance at first. It was just an old, forgotten Victorian house, left to her by a distant relative she barely remembered. It stood on the outskirts of nowhere, a place swallowed by time and neglect, with its cracked windows and groaning woodwork, whispering tales of disuse. Still, Claire had nothing to lose. Her life was already a tangle of dead-end jobs and frayed relationships, and the idea of starting over in a free home seemed like an unexpected blessing, or so she thought. The house welcomed her with silence, the kind that made the air heavy and left an ache in her chest. Its interior, cloaked in dust and gloom, seemed frozen in the past, as if waiting for its next chapter. That night, Claire tried to sleep, but something wasn't right. The walls creaked with a life of their own, and whispers, barely audible but persistent, seeped into her consciousness. She tried to shake it off, convincing herself it was nothing more than the house settling or her overactive imagination. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder, their words fragmented but beckoning. When she discovered a pile of unopened letters in the kitchen, curiosity overtook her. Among them was one sealed in red wax, bearing her name in elegant but unsettling handwriting. The message was simple: "Do not enter the attic." A chill crept down her spine as she stared at the ceiling, where the attic's trapdoor was barely visible. She laughed nervously, pushing the note aside, but the warning lingered in her mind. Trying to distract herself, Claire spent the day cleaning, uncovering furniture and sorting through the remnants of lives long past. She stumbled upon an old photo album with images of a family she didn't recognize. Parents and 2 children, all stiffly posed in front of the house. The father's eyes seemed to follow her as she turned the pages, and the last entry held a cryptic message: "Only the brave face the shadows." That night, sleep eluded her again. The whispers had returned, louder now, weaving through the dark like threads pulling her towards something unseen. They seemed to emanate from the attic, a siren song Claire desperately tried to ignore. But curiosity, as always, won. Gripping a flashlight, she stood beneath the trapdoor, hesitating. The pull string dangled like a noose, and with trembling fingers, she gave it a yank. The attic door creaked open, releasing a gust of cold air that smelled of mildew and decay. The whispers intensified, urging her upward. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, slamming the door shut and retreating to her room. The following day, she vowed to forget about the attic. But as night fell, the whispers returned, relentless and coaxing. Claire's patience snapped. Grabbing her flashlight, she marched back to the attic and climbed the creaking stairs. The space was suffocating, filled with forgotten relics and the weight of something unseen. Her flashlight beam danced over trunks and cobwebs until it settled on one object that stood out, an ornate trunk, polished and pristine, as if untouched by time. The whispers crescendoed, their message now clear. "Open it." Her heart pounded as she lifted the lid, revealing its contents: a bundle of letters, an old photograph of the family from the album, and a small cloth-wrapped object. Unwrapping it, she found an ornate mirror. The whispers stopped. The silence was deafening. Claire stared into the mirror, her reflection staring back. But something was off. The image in the glass smiled while her face remained expressionless. The smile widened unnaturally, and the reflection raised a hand, pointing behind her. Claire froze, dread pooling in her stomach. Slowly she turned, but nothing was there. When she looked back at the mirror, her reflection was gone. Fear gripped her as she retreated to the living room, clutching the mirror like a cursed talisman. She rummaged through the letters from the trunk, hoping for answers. One stood out, written in a trembling hand: "The mirror is cursed. It reveals the truth behind the shadows. Do not trust what you see." The words haunted her, She tried to rid herself of the mirror, throwing it in the trash, hurling it into the woods, even smashing it with a hammer, but it always returned, whole and waiting. Each attempt made the whispers louder, more insistent. Exhausted and unraveling, Claire found herself drawn to the mirror's pull. It sat on her nightstand like a living thing, daring her to look. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. The surface of the mirror rippled like water, and she leaned closer, compelled by a force she couldn't explain. Without warning, a shadowy hand shot out, gripping her wrist with icy strength. Claire screamed as the shadow emerged, pulling her into the glass dot. She tumbled into a warped version of her home, where everything was gray and distorted, the air thick with malice. Shadows moved independent,